Okay, Bible and Daily Lifers, here we are, going through the whole Bible, doing it in a year, moving along. We're starting to make some progress. We're starting to move into the land of Israel. The children of Israel are going into the land of Canaan. They're now called Israel because Jacob's name was changed when he wrestled with God, changed his name from Jacob to Israel. And so therefore all of his children, all of his family, they all became known as Israel. The nation became known as Israel. At this point in Joshua, they're going into the land. But wait a minute. What do you mean they're going into the land? This is the land where Abraham was when this whole saga began. If you recall, as we went through the book of Genesis, God takes Abraham out of the region of Mesopotamia, and he brings him into the land known now as Israel, or known as Canaan, right here in this particular point in history, known as Canaan, will be known as Israel. And he told him that he was going to give him that land, and he gave him the boundaries that he was going to give him the land. So Abraham believes God, and some things begin to happen, and his family ends up growing to 70 people, and there's a famine in the land, and they move down into Egypt. But in chapter 15 of Genesis, when God is making these great promises to Abraham, he tells him that his family is going to be slaves for 400 years, and after that they'll come out, and they'll go into the land. So we're saying now, in the book of Joshua, after them being 400 years slaves in Egypt and then 40 years wandering in the desert. So, some 450 years later, they're going into the land. Abraham had already been in that land. They're going into the land that was promised to Abraham. They're going into the land that was promised them. Now, 450 years from them going down into Egypt and them wandering in the wilderness. And then there's more years added onto that between the life of Isaac and Jacob and their dad Abraham, the dad and their grandpa. So here we are, chapter 2, Joshua, who he sends in these spies to go look at the land. Well, this is a little bit of a replay too, because they had gone in before to spy out the land. And they got discouraged. They said, those guys are too big. They'll just ruin us. They're giants, and we're just little grasshoppers. So now they're getting ready to go into the land. And that brings us up to chapter 3. So let's take a look at this, going into the land. Joshua rose early in the morning. He knows what's going on, and he's excited. You know how that is when something's going on in your life, you're doing something that day. I don't know, maybe you're going to Disney World with the family, and you've been talking about it for a couple of months now, and you have to get on the plane, and you have to get in the car or whatever it is that you're doing, and you get up early. He's up early. And he set out from the acacia grove, and he came to the Jordan, he and all the children of Israel, and he lodged there before they crossed over. So they're staying on the other side of the Jordan, looking over it, getting ready to cross it. They're going in. They're going in. Going into the land that was promised them. Going into the land where Abraham, their forefather. So it was, after 3 days, that number 3 shows up all the time. Remember we said we're going to look for things that exist all through the Bible? Well, that's one of them, 3. After 3 days that the officers went through the camp, and they commanded the people, saying, when you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God and the priests and the Levites bearing it, then you shall set out from your place and go after it. So the ark was going to represent really the presence of God, is the presence of God. And when the presence of God moves, then you move. When the presence of God goes across the Jordan, you go across the Jordan. You follow. He leads, you follow. Boy, that's just a theme all through the scriptures, right? If we can get that one, we'll be okay. Yet there's to be a space between you and the ark, 2,000 cubits. A cubit is like from the top of your middle finger down to your elbow, cubit, kind of a yardstick, the way we would use a yardstick. And Joshua says to the people in verse 5, sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord's going to do wonders among you. You're going to see a miracle. The Lord's going to do a miracle as we go across. And it tells all the things that they're supposed to do, and it brings us up to, let's go, verse 11. chapter 3, and behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is crossing over before you into the Jordan. God's going across. He's going into the Jordan before you. Now, therefore, take for yourselves 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. And it shall come to representatives of all of the people, right? And it shall, at number 12, boy, we were almost going to let that one get past us. And number 12 will show up all through the scriptures. And it shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of your feet of the priests who bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of the Jordan, that the waters of the Jordan shall be cut off, and the waters that from come downstream, they'll stand in a heap. So they're going to be able to go through on dry ground, just like they did before. Remember in the Red Sea when they crossed when they were coming out of Egypt. And it was so when the people set out from their camp to cross over the Jordan with the priests bearing the ark of the covenant before the people. And as those who bore the ark came to the Jordan, the feet of the priests who bore the ark tipped in the edge of the water. For the Jordan overflows its banks during this time of year, during the time of the harvest. That the waters which came down upstream stood still and rose in a heap very far from Adam, the city of Zaratan. And so the waters that went down to the sea of Arabah, the salt sea, failed and were cut off, and the people crossed opposite Jericho. Jericho's on the other side. They're going across the Jordan, dry land. Then the priests who bore the ark of the Lord of the covenant stood firm on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan, and all of Israel crossed on dry ground until they crossed completely over. So, what's going on? Chapter 4, memorial stones. Came to pass when the people had completely crossed over that the Lord spoke to Joshua, and he said, take the 12 guys. Take for yourself the 12 men from the people, one person from each tribe, and command them, saying, take yourselves 12 stones from here out in the midst of the Jordan, and place them where the priests stood firm, their feet did, and carry them over with you, and leave them in the lodging place that you lodged tonight. And so Joshua called the 12 men who he had appointed over the children of Israel, one from each tribe, and he said, cross over before the ark of the Lord into the midst of the Jordan, and each of you take a stone on his shoulder, big stone, according to the number of the tribes of Israel, that this may be a sign. And they're going to put those stones up. It's going to be stones of remembrance, memorial stones, remembering what God has done. And, in our lives, there's maybe for some of us, there's some memorial stones, things that relationships we've had with God and things that have happened with us with God. And we put up those memorial stones. Then, chapter 5. And so it was, when the king of the Amorites were on the west side of the Jordan, and all the kings of the Canaanites by the sea heard the Lord had dried up the waters from before the Jordan and had crossed over, their heart melted, I guess. And there was no spirit in them any longer because of the children of Israel. At that time the Lord said to Joshua, make flint knives for yourselves and circumcise the sons of Israel a second time. And so he did this for himself, and he circumcised all the sons of Israel at the hill of the foreskins. That's what they called it. And this is the reason why Joshua circumcised them. All the people who came out of Egypt were males. All of the men of war had died in the wilderness along the way if they had come out. And for all the people who had come out had been circumcised, but all the people born in the wilderness on the way of Egypt had not. This is going to be the sign of the covenant between them and God. Verse 13, it came to pass when Joshua was by Jericho, they're going to go and take Jericho. They're going to go take this land. That he stood and he lifted his eyes, he looked, and behold, there was a man who stood opposite him with a sword in his hand. Who is this? Is this the Lord? Is this an angel? Is it a vision? What is this? And Joshua went to him, and he said, are you for us? Are you for our adversaries? He said, oh no, I'm the commander of the Lord's army, and now I've come. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth, and he worshipped, and he said to him, what does my Lord say to his servant? And the commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, take off your sandals, off your feet, for the place that you're standing is holy. Wow, holy ground. What makes ground holy? Where God is, where you meet God. That's the holy place. The holy place is where you meet God. It's not the church sanctuary. It's not the Sunday school room. It's not the prayer room. It's where you meet God. Well, this will show up again in Acts chapter 7 when we get there. Hey, so bless you. We're going to move along, and they're going to move into the land, and they're going to start taking the land that God had promised to Abraham so long ago. God don't make promises he don't keep. Hey, bless you guys. Love you. We're going to move along. It's going to be great.